let's listen to this great article that Caitlin Johnstone wrote, and this is an audio version of that talks about letting genocide enablers show up at these events, and then we'll comment. And I got a couple of more receipts here. Let's listen. It's not even 4 minutes. It's like 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Let's listen.
Opposing the Gaza genocide while supporting Biden is a dishonest, nonsensical position. Nobody who claims to oppose the Gaza genocide while simultaneously supporting Joe Biden actually opposes the Gaza genocide. They're just saying what needs to be said to win approval in the political sector they want the approval of. They're not taking a moral stand. They're cultivating an image. They're building a brand. One of many possible examples of this ridiculous posturing is Instagram progressive Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has called Israel's atrocities in Gaza an unfolding genocide, while continuing to support and defend the U.S. president who is currently backing that genocide, and who recently attended one of the pro-Palestine campus demonstrations, which her president recently smeared as anti-Semitic protests. What AOC is doing here is attempting to straddle the impossible divide between what progressive Democrats claim their party is about and what it's actually about in real life. She's paying lip service to opposing injustice, supporting a ceasefire, and siding with anti-genocide activists because that's the sort of thing progressives are supposed to do, while simultaneously throwing her political support behind an administration that is facilitating injustice, keeping the genocide going, and smearing those who protest against it. You really couldn't put together a more incoherent position if you tried. You can't acknowledge that Israel is committing genocide without also acknowledging that the Biden administration has been actively participating in that genocide. If you acknowledge that Biden is guilty of genocide, then you are acknowledging that he is guilty of the most horrific crime a state leader can possibly commit, short of initiating a nuclear exchange. Once you've acknowledged that Biden is guilty of doing pretty much the worst thing any state leader could possibly do, you've crossed a threshold. After such an acknowledgement, it is not logically or ethically coherent to follow it by saying you support him anyway because at least he's a bit nicer to LGBT people than Donald Trump would be, or because he might try a tiny bit harder to reduce global warming. You've acknowledged that he is participating in genocide. Genocide! There's no but that could possibly follow that. It's like saying, sure, my husband's a serial killer, but he's great with the kids. If someone said that to you, the only conclusion you could possibly come to is that they're not all that bothered by the serial killing. Those who support Israel's actions in Gaza are the worst people on earth, but at least their position has some kind of integrity. They're not contradicting themselves by pretending to oppose what they're actually fine with. They're not tearing themselves in half trying to straddle two completely incompatible positions while smiling for the camera and pretending it doesn't hurt. They're not posturing as compassionate anti-imperialists while serving the evil empire. Those who are supporting Biden while opposing the destruction of Gaza do not have any kind of integrity. They're just wearing whatever mask is politically convenient based on the way the winds are blowing on a given moment, while continuing to support the U.S. centralized empire which cannot be sustained without nonstop tyranny and bloodshed. They are providing social media-friendly sound bites which pay lip service to peace, while their true loyalty lies with the globe-spanning power structure whose existence makes peace impossible.
And again, Caitlin Johnson always with the great synopsises or analysis. I know you're going to be taking off after this, but I'll give you the chance to comment on Caitlin Johnstone's latest piece that we just heard, and any other comments about the Columbia protest for you.
Yeah, I want to point out. First of all, I agree with everything Caitlin said, and I usually do. She's brilliant. AOC's been a hypocrite for a while. You know, we all had that brief moment where we had hope, and I thought, wow, what if she's the one that's going to really make a difference as far as like standing her ground, you know? And she quickly proved otherwise. I want to be really clear. AOC was not invited into the encampment by the leaders of the student encampment at Columbia. That encampment is on an open quad in Columbia. If anybody has gotten onto the university grounds, they can enter. There were faculty standing with some students at the entrance that make sure everybody looks at the rules before they go in. Like they have rules like no drugs or alcohol, don't smoke cigarettes in here, don't engage in arguments. Like you can talk and discuss, but you don't want to like fight if counter protesters are shouting. We are here because of Gaza and the West Bank. It's very clear. These rules are beautiful. We don't stop people from coming in. We're not fascists. She was on the campus. She walked into the encampment and walked around on the outside of it too. And that's where that, she took some photos. But I think it's important to know not only that, students, the leaders and Students for Justice in Palestine of Columbia came out with a statement decrying opportunists who were using this movement for political gain or for celebrity. So they were calling out behaviors just like that. I want people to know that. Look, Cornel West came in. He was there. He jumped the fence. I thought his speech was excellent. I got some problems with
all my critiques of Cornel West, I would say that's a more genuine.
Yeah, that's
I
him.
wouldn't classify him in the same category as an AOC showing up.
No,
I wouldn't. But go ahead. Yeah,
I was using that as an example. Like he was there. He jumped the fence, went onto the other side when they moved the tents, and he gave a speech that he's given a million times about Palestine and Gaza. Like he's been talking about this for years. Even though he's not good at campaigns, he knows right. The issue. But like, yeah, we don't control that. There are opportunists, and they were called out. I just want people to be clear that the students aren't aligning themselves with that. Listen, AOC now at least knows what's going on in these encampments because she did see it for herself. And the one positive that comes out of it is she knows that all this bullshit about it's anti-Semitic, it's hateful, is a lie. The question is she willing to stand up against the president and the leader of her party, Joe Biden, and call him out for his lies about what's going on with these protesters? Because now there's no excuse. She's literally seen it with her own eyes. And anybody who's trying to twist that to say, well, the students are being misled. No, they're not. They know who these people are. But also, if somebody, even in rhetoric, is willing to stand up and say free Palestine, okay. We'll talk about your shitty votes in the past before, your present vote on the Iron Dome another day, because I think they're disingenuous. But listen, this is a genocide, and I'm not going to have tribal fights about who's going to oppose it. My question for AOC, for Bernie Sanders, for these people is, what are you willing to put on the line? Are you willing to risk your career? Because I think deep inside, they know this is the worst thing a president can do. Are you willing to risk your career? Bernie, you're 81 years old. You're 82 years old. At some point, you're going to retire. Now's the time. Listen, but if he doesn't, we don't need them. The students are proving we don't need icons and celebrities. We're standing up for ourselves. And that to me is the most beautiful thing. I can give 1 minute.
I do think that we give more grace to people like Sam Cedar, like Cristobal. That I give those people more grace. I give less grace to people that are elected who have power and choosing not to use it in an effort to get what they say they want done. So I would put her differently. But you were going to say something when I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No. It's a conversation. I'm sorry. I was just going on. Yeah, I don't know. I have a, I see a big difference between Sam and Crystal. Like, I think Crystal's analysis is spot on, and I just think he's a phony. I always thought Sam Cedar was a phony. He just comes across that way to me. And the other thing is, I don't care who people vote for, but like AOC, you want to vote in the voting booth, you vote for Biden, that's on your conscience. But you're standing there taking photos with him, putting it up on your Instagram to try to manipulate younger voters to make them think it's okay to vote for him while he is funding the genocide you say you're against. That's not standing in solidarity with the families of the 15,000 kids that were buried under rubble in Gaza with bombs sent by Joe Biden over 100 times without congressional approval since October. And so we don't worry about them. We don't worry about the celebrities. We don't worry about the people posing for pictures. We listen to the voices of those students who are speaking for the voiceless folks of Palestine. Those are the people whose voices matter most. And I think maybe if I come on again, we'll talk about Joe Biden and younger voters. I mean, imagine being so attached to letting Israel slaughter innocent Palestinians that you're willing to risk losing to Donald Trump. That's how important it is to them. I mean, this is maniacal behavior. It is psychotic. I use the word clearly. It is seriously psychotic behavior. That's how important this genocide is to them. I don't know anyone under 30 or 35 that's planning to vote for Biden. Even non-political people I know are like, well, I might as well stay home. And I'm like, no, vote for Jill Stein. And that's another thing you should look into. Like, they arrested her. You know that.
Yeah, I'm covering that. I mean, I know you got to go, but I am covering that today. So I'll probably be on at least another hour. I got a lot of stuff. And I have to do longer streams because I can't come on as frequently. So I will be covering her arrest. I'm going to be covering her call out RFK because RFK was at these things. You know how he's a giantess collecting signatures, the audacity. So yeah, I'm covering all of that a little bit later.
I did. It's interesting. Yeah, she called out, but I did see a Jill Stein person outside the encampment at Columbia, but on the Columbia campus, collecting signatures. So I was glad there was a Jill Stein person there. But RFK, I don't even know if RFK is a Zionist. I think RFK is an opportunist. I don't know what RFK believes. I know I can only go by what he says. He firmly believes he must double down in his support for Israel as they wage a genocide if he has any chance of being elected. I believe RFK believes he can be elected. And that's the only reason. Oh, I don't know. He might agree with the genocide, or he might not. But I believe he thinks he has to publicly double down in his support for Israel in order to get elected. And I mean, it's disgusting. It really is.
Yeah, because if you recall, not the only reason, but when he's turned up the temperature in his support for Israel publicly is when the rabbi called him out for being anti-Semitic, for not. That's when he flipped the switch and became this person, this different person. Prior to that, he had the same beliefs. Israel wasn't on the forefront of his mind. Like, he never really talked about it. But yeah, it's your point.
Thing for him. It's the inconvenient thing for RFK, I think. And for Joe Biden, they didn't expect this. Well, here it is. And the masks are off and people are seeing it. And it's not just Muslims and Arabs that are traditionally Democratic voters that are thinking about not voting for Joe Biden. It's young people. It's him being 20 points down with black voters, and it's not just Israel and Gaza. It's the shitty economy. It's all of these things. You offer no solutions. You give $100 billion to these countries to buy weapons from Raytheon, and you can't give universal free lunches to kids. So we know who they are, And I will just end with they're apoplectic and terrified. They're pulling out all the stops, and none of it's working. None of it's working. And Israel's in a hell of a position right now because their stature in the world has plummeted. Any sympathy they had from the attacks of October 7th. No one's even talking about that, not because we don't care when innocent people die, but because every single day you're blowing limbs off 8-year-olds. And, the establishment does not know what to do with itself because all their tricks are not working. So there you go.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much. It just happenstance. Because I think the last time I had you and Chuck on together before, that just happenstance because both of you happen to be connected to universities, or he was reporting on one, you work at one that's at the forefront of this. So it was great to have both of you on. Thank you again for joining me. I'm sure I'll be reaching out next week or the following week to have you on again. But go ahead if you wanted to say something else.
I got one thing to say. This just came out. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights just issued the following brief statement. Her name is Mary Lawler. She's the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights. Quote, I'm hearing disturbing reports that students face suspension if they don't end their peaceful protests at Columbia University in the United States. This is a clear violation of the right to peaceful assembly. Unquote. That is the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights calling out the administration of Columbia for violating human rights. Let's leave it there. Just came out minutes ago.
Yeah, and that's Mary Lawler, Lawlor. If anybody wanted to look that up, I did see that too. When are you back on campus? Are you going to be on campus to do any? Because I know you say you were going to stay away a little bit, but are you planning to go back
today?
I couldn't be
there today. And I'm not going to say when I'll be back, but it will be very soon. And I was just there the other day.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, we don't want to broadcast that, so that's actually
I mean,
great point.
Crazy people out there, but yeah, I'll be there. And there's other schools that have expressed that they are going to be starting something, right? I don't know. They've already engaged in protests, so this thing is not going away.
Yeah.
I just wish
solidarity. Yeah. And I will drop you to the back again. Appreciate you coming on, sir. And that is the professor. Show him some love in the comments. And I'm gonna continue with this segment. And I'm glad I had the professor on to speak about the part about AOC was not invited. Because I'm going to continue with this segment on the genocide enablers crashing this movement, this encampment. And this is Nick. And Professor Anthony Z kind of answers what Nick asked right here, this first question. Because Nick says, can someone explain to me how letting politicians who support Genocide Joe make an appearance at anti-genocide protests help our movement? And they don't, Nick. And before I heard Professor Anthony's answer, I was pretty pissed off. Like, why are you guys inviting these clowns? You're giving me a shaky feeling about your stance on this, considering these are fence sitters, the AOCs, the Ilhan Omars. But I was so happy to hear from Professor A, and he's a teacher, a professor on the campus of Columbia University. To hear him say, no activists invited them. This is an open public space, and they just showed up. That's it. So I'll continue, though, with Nick's tweet. How does Ilhan Omar, for example, showing up help us? Honest question. She sold out her own people of Somalia and supports funding Nazis in Ukraine. She also is a strong supporter of the president who we are protesting. I'll make the argument that inviting these sellout politicians hurt the legitimacy of the movement, but people are too caught up in the celebrity worship to move in a tactical way. I'll read that again. I think I missed the word. I'll make the argument that inviting these sellout politicians hurt the legitimacy of the movement, but people are too caught up in the celebrity worship to move in a tactical way. We don't need politicians. They need us. That's why they make these appearances at protests. Stop falling for it. So I have the same critique. And like I said, I'm so happy that Anthony, a professor at Columbia, was here to say, no, they didn't invite them. They just kind of showed up. And so the title of this segment is spot on, that they crashed this. And here is 20 seconds of one of the genocide enablers. You call her Ilhan Omar. Oops. Where did it go? Does that sometimes. Ilhan Omar showing up to fool people. So here she goes. Let's see if it works this time. Okay, it did. It was Ilhan Omar, then we'll go to AOC. I think the way she's walking through here kind of speaks to what Professor said, that she just showed up. Because if you were invited, wouldn't they meet you at the entrance when you show up? Wouldn't you be walking with a sort of tour guide or a person who is here to guide you and be the liaison? Instead, she's walking by herself with somebody videotaping her. And not even walking with a clear sense of where she's going. Just kind of I'm walking around. That's what you do when you show up somewhere uninvited and you need to figure out what's going on. This is what it looks like. I'll rewind. It is only 20 seconds. Let's look.
Thank you so much for coming.
These progressives know they have fans like this. This is how they know they can, even when they're wrong, like when AOC was getting protested about Ukraine war, even though they know when they're in the wrong, they know they can stand on being wrong and still have fans support them. Now, that's Ilhan Omar. I'll read what Nick says in just 1 second. And then this is Ashley with the critique, but that's AOC. Now, AOC just showed up and crashed the party too. There's no video. I don't have a video. But let's read what Ashley says here. AOC cannot in one breath talk about solidarity with Palestinians, then out of the other side of her neck, talk about supporting and voting for Joe Biden. He is directly responsible for what's happening. You must choose a side, and she has chosen hers. Treat her accordingly. Spot on. 10,000, 250,000 people retweeted that. Here is Luna Oy. We need to bring her back on RBN. She was one of the people who came on when we were FHL. She I think that might have been the last time she was on. No, she was on since we changed her name. No, she's been on. But it has been a long while. But she also has a spot on critique or analysis. Let's blow it up so I can see this better. Allowing AOC and others and other establishment liberals into revolutionary spaces comes with serious risks that need to be considered. It must be assured that liberal impact on the liberation movement is minimized, and that the movement must try to exert maximum influence on liberals, meaning the liberals can't be in leadership positions. The movement can't be listening to what the liberal people are saying we should do. We should be telling them what to do if they're going to be part of this movement. The tail doesn't wag the dog, in other words. Here's Jimmy Dore also commenting, quote, tweeting Nick's tweet that I read earlier. Jimmy says, if you consider yourself an actual left-wing, I'm sorry, let me make sure I can see this. If you consider yourself an actual left-wing person and support these elected Democrats who support union-busting Genocide Joe, you are a sucker of the highest order. AOC and Bernie are there to make sure you don't revolt against the oligarch and keep you invested in supporting. Let me read on. Let me make this bigger. 1 second, everybody. And keep you invested in supporting the anti-worker, pro-war Democratic Party. Spot on. That's Jimmy. I think I got maybe 2 more comments here that I want to go over. 2 more. Yeah, not that one. Luna, Jimmy. This one, Margaret. Margaret Kimberly says, this is why I can't stand her. And she's talking about AOC. She endorses Biden and then pretends to be outraged by the war crimes, which wouldn't happen without Biden's support. And then here is Nick chiming in again. I really wish anti-war protesters would stop letting these genocide enablers near our spaces until they condemn and unendorsed Genocide Joe. They are using you as a campaign prop. I really wish people understood we don't need these sellouts to legitimize our movement. And that is spot on from Nick. And I'm going to go ahead and replay what Caitlin Johnstone says here to sum up this. Oops, where'd it go? To sum up this segment on the infiltration or the attempted infiltration by these sellouts and genocide enablers like Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders, and AOC. Let's listen.
Opposing the Gaza genocide while supporting Biden is a dishonest, nonsensical position. Nobody who claims to oppose the Gaza genocide while simultaneously supporting Joe Biden actually opposes the Gaza genocide. They're just saying what needs to be said to win approval in the political sector they want the approval of. They're not taking a moral stand. They're cultivating an image. They're building a brand. One of many possible examples of this ridiculous posturing is Instagram progressive Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has called Israel's atrocities in Gaza an unfolding genocide, while continuing to support and defend the U.S. president who is currently backing that genocide, and who recently attended one of the pro-Palestine campus demonstrations, which her president recently smeared as anti-Semitic protests. What AOC is doing here is attempting to straddle the impossible divide between what progressive Democrats claim their party is about and what it's actually about in real life. She's paying lip service to opposing injustice, supporting a ceasefire, and siding with anti-genocide activists because that's the sort of thing progressives are supposed to do, while simultaneously throwing her political support behind an administration that is facilitating injustice, keeping the genocide going, and smearing those who protest against it. You really couldn't put together a more incoherent position if you tried. You can't acknowledge that Israel is committing genocide without also acknowledging that the Biden administration has been actively participating in that genocide. If you acknowledge that Biden is guilty of genocide, then you are acknowledging that he is guilty of the most horrific crime a state leader can possibly commit, short of initiating a nuclear exchange. Once you've acknowledged that Biden is guilty of doing pretty much the worst thing any state leader could possibly do, you've crossed a threshold. After such an acknowledgement, it is not logically or ethically coherent to follow it by saying you support him anyway because at least he's a bit nicer to LGBT people than Donald Trump would be, or because he might try a tiny bit harder to reduce global warming. You've acknowledged that he is participating in genocide. Genocide. There's no but that could possibly follow that. It's like saying, sure, my husband's a serial killer, but he's great with the kids. If someone said that to you, the only conclusion you could possibly come to is that they're not all that bothered by the serial killing.
Right.
Those who support Israel's actions in Gaza are the worst people on earth, but at least their position has some kind of integrity. They're not contradicting themselves by pretending to oppose what they're actually fine with. They're not tearing themselves in half trying to straddle two completely incompatible positions while smiling for the camera and pretending it doesn't hurt. They're not posturing as compassionate anti-imperialists while serving the evil empire. Those who are supporting Biden while opposing the destruction of Gaza do not have any kind of integrity. They're just wearing whatever mask is politically convenient based on the way the winds are blowing on a given moment, while continuing to support the U.S. centralized empire, which cannot be sustained without nonstop tyranny and bloodshed. They are providing social media-friendly sound bites which pay lip service to peace, while their true loyalty lies with the globe-spanning power structure whose existence makes peace impossible.
It makes peace impossible. So this is such a great this is one of my favorite articles from her, because the language, the wording is words that I would specifically use when making this analysis. And, what I would take, several sentences to break down, she is so concise in just one sentence to kind of talk about something I would take a long time to relate to the audience. So that's why I appreciate Caitlin so much. She's very concise with humor and gets to sort of the intellectual point. And one of the things she says that kind of stands out to me is that you like to come to the conclusion that this is a genocide, or in Bernie Sanders' case, he's now saying that this is ethnic cleansing. So to come to either one of those conclusions and then pivot and say, but support him, is completely illogical. It's completely hypocritical. All the words that Caitlin Johnstone used in this segment here. So great article by her. Make sure you check it out. I saw it on Twitter, but she also uploads it on YouTube. So if you follow her on YouTube or Twitter, you will be able to see that. Where's that other video? So I want to play another video right here. So let's listen to what Joe Biden was saying about the protests, and then some other presidents about protests. Let's listen. This is how he described the ability to protest when Trump was in office and he had a problem with protests. It's funny how he had a different perspective. So let's listen to Joe. And then it goes into Obama and some other people.
We are still, at our core, a democracy. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it.
We give thanks for all our men and women in uniform. We give thanks for the freedoms they defend. The freedom to think what we want and say what we think. People around the world are fighting and even dying for their chance at these freedoms.
We will defend our freedom. We will bring freedom to others.
America was founded on liberty and independence. We are born free and we will stay free.
So it is the policy of the United States to seek and support the growth of democratic movements and culture with the ultimate goal of ending tyranny in our world.
I just want to tell you that America is the greatest place on earth.
That is the true genius of America.
Credo put that together. They're not brand new, but they're a newer sort of outlet. They do a lot of foreign policy reporting, a lot of I get a lot of news on Yemen and what's happening in the Middle East from that outlet. This is Mumia showing support for university student protests. And let me just read a little bit from it. Well, let me read the headline. Do not bow ex-Black Panther, praises pro-Palestinian student protest from prison. Mumia Abu-Jamal tells New York City students they're on the right side of history by deciding not to be silent and speak out. Quote, "You're against a colonial regime that steals the land from the people who are indigenous to that land. I urge you to speak out against the terrorism that is afflicted upon Gaza with all of your might, all of your will, and all of your strength. Do not bow to those who want you to be silent." End quote. That's a quote from Mumia. The article goes on to say, as hundreds of students and supporters at CUNY campus, that's the Columbia University of New York, encampment in Harlem cheered, he continued, quote, "This is the movement to be heard and shake the earth so that the people of Gaza, the people of Rafah, the people of West Bank, and the people of Palestine can feel your solidarity with them." Abu-Jamal was founding member of Philadelphia chapter of the Black Panther Party and went on to become a radio journalist as well as president of Philadelphia chapter of Black Association of Journalists. In 1982, he was convicted and sentenced to death in 1982 for the murder of police officer Daniel Faulkner in Philadelphia in 1981. Abu-Jamal spent almost 3 decades in solitary confinement on death row before his death sentence was overturned by a federal court, citing irregularities in the original sentencing process. A prolific writer, critic of the U.S. criminal justice system and Black struggle, Mumia is serving life without parole, and his supporters regard him as a political prisoner. So I thought that was just a feel-good sort of part of the story where you have somebody, a sort of iconic figure as this Black Panther, and Mumia giving at least verbal support, the support that he can